I think people have seen in both parties what happened when a wave of globalization tore down these types of communities. And what we're focused on doing is building those back up. So we're going to pay our workers, we're going to pay them living wages. Aluminum is a big part of every aspect of American life. It truly is everywhere. And as President Trump said, if you don't have your own aluminum, if you don't have your own steel industry, you really don't have a country. We've also announced plans to build the first new smelter to be built in the United States in 50 years. We'll double U.S. production, represent billions of dollars in new investment. That smelter will be another huge product. So for the first time in a long time, we're seeing manufacturing jobs come back to this country and investment come back to this country as a direct result of this president's programs.
Now, joining us for a discussion on the 85% problem, why America can't defend what it can't produce, please welcome Chief Executive Officer at Century Aluminum Company, Jesse Gary, and Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of Commerce, Joshua Kroon. Moderated by Executive Director of SAFE's Center for Strategic Industrial Materials, Quinn.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 85% panel. We're going to keep the focus this morning on the aluminum industry. Yesterday, we heard a good discussion on alumina, the vital feedstock used to make aluminum. There was also a discussion on the national security imperative of recycling the aluminum we have. But for this morning, we're going to talk about that middle section, the primary section. SAFE believes that the United States is overly reliant on imports of primary aluminum. As this session title indicates, we only make 15% of the metal we need. It didn't used to be this way. In the year 2000, the United States had 23 smelters making 3.5 million metric tons. We were the world's leading primary aluminum producer. Fast forward to today, 23 smelters, down to 4. 3.5 million tons, it's more like 0.7. We were number 1, we're now number 9. Why does this matter? Because of the outsized role aluminum plays as an input material for critical sectors. Defense, transportation, energy, manufacturing, the list goes on and on and on. That's why SAFE believes the United States and its Western allies need a secure supply of aluminum. Now, there are plenty of challenges before us, but thankfully, we've got Jesse and Josh on stage who can talk about the solution side of things. Jesse, I want to ask you about Century. I want to talk about production. This is a SAFE event. Let's talk about energy. And then, Josh, I want to ask you about Commerce's view and what we can do on the policy side of things. But, Jesse, can you help us level set a little bit? Tell us about Century Aluminum. What do you do and how do you do it?
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be here. So Century Aluminum is the largest producer of aluminum in the United States. Joe did a very good introduction. We've gone from 23 smelters down to four smelters today. We operate 2 of those smelters, and we're building a 3rd smelter in Oklahoma. So the good news to this story, and I know we'll get into this a little bit, Joe, is we are expanding today. We're expanding our existing smelter base, increasing U.S. production by 10% over the next 3 months. And then when we build our new smelter in Oklahoma, we'll double the size of the industry. So Century views itself as the leading U.S. aluminum company. We've been the largest investor in the U.S. over these past several years, and will continue to be the largest investor in the U.S. aluminum industry.
Can you talk about the production side, supply demand? On the one hand, supply is going down at a time of growing demand. You're at the front line of this. How are you seeing this? And what are you guys doing to address this? Oh, tell us more about this Oklahoma project.
So the great news in the aluminum industry is demand is not a problem. Aluminum is everywhere. It's growing in its applications. It's necessary for national defense. It's necessary for packaging. It's necessary for automotive. It's really everywhere in every aspect of our American life. So we don't have a demand side problem in this country. We have a supply side problem. A lot of that supply side problem was built on the backs of foreign subsidies of aluminum production. So over that same time period Joe was mentioning, China went from 5% of the world's production to 65% of the world's production on the backs of heavy state subsidization. And what really changed the story for the US aluminum industry was when President Trump implemented his Section 232 tariff program back in 2018. And once that came into effect, it allowed us to build a wall to offset that subsidization that was going on in China and begin to invest here at home. And Century's been a big part of that. So we've been building out these existing smelters, and now we're turning to build this new smelter in Oklahoma. So the new smelter in Oklahoma will be a cutting-edge smelter. The rest of our smelter fleet today is 50 years old. This new smelter will be brand new, the largest single pot line to be built in the world. Will be almost 20% more efficient than the existing smelter base, and will allow us to train a new generation of aluminum workers and to develop this expertise in order to feed that demand and to meet the country's demand for this aluminum.
Every manufacturer talks about the need for more energy. Can you explain the unique position of aluminum when it comes to energy? Base load, durability, price. For better, for worse, you are uniquely situated in the energy discussion. Can you explain that?
That's true. So I think when most people think about a factory and they think about the energy needed to run that factory, they think of a general widget factory where energy is maybe turning a rolling press or turning a wheel somewhere. In aluminum, it's different. We use the electricity for an electrolytic smelting process, which is to say we break a chemical bond of the aluminum molecule with an oxygen molecule. And that all needs to be done under very high electrical load. And so the difference here is it's not a cost side, it's actually an input. It's a raw material into our process, which is different than most manufacturing processes. So given that aluminum is essential for national security, the energy for aluminum production is also essential because we can't make vast amounts of aluminum without high electrical load. And so when we look at building a new smelter, or really operating our existing smelters, it's important that we have access to, one, enough energy, and we're talking about gigawatts of energy to power these new modern smelters, and two, electricity that's readily available and available 24/7. So we don't have the ability to stop our process, say, as a normal manufacturing process would. We literally have molten aluminum in these pots, and if you take it off load for more than 4 hours, it solidifies in the pots. So we need enough power, we need that to be reliable power, and we need it to be competitively priced power. The good news is there are areas in this country where you can still find that, and that's how we came to Oklahoma, and we're building outside of Tulsa.
What is the timeline for the smelter? It sounds like demand's going up, whether we get out of bed or not. So the need for that metal continues to grow. When can you add to that?
So we're going as fast as possible. We're working with both the federal government and the local governments in Oklahoma to bring that timeline in as fast as we can. Right now, we've said we can have it up by the end of the decade. We're hopeful we can bring that timeline down as well. A lot of that has to do with permitting, and I know that there's been a lot of talk about permitting reform here, and we'd be big proponents of that. We could build this smelter much faster than that timeline. Permitting is really something that slows it down, and we can't even break ground for some period of time, even though we're ready to go today.
Gotcha. Okay, I've got another question on energy, but Josh, I want to turn to you. We were at an event earlier this year, and you had this great line. Yes, industry is watching commerce. What are you guys doing? But you said commerce is watching industry too. This must be music to your ears.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Joe, thanks for having us here again today. And Jesse, thanks for all the kind words. I think that, obviously there's no bigger champion for industry and reindustrialization than the president and the secretary. And when we look at industry today, I think industry's been doing a lot of the right things, right? I think the biggest thing we say is bigger, faster, right? And I think Jesse just hinted at that. Permitting, it's never been easier to get permits in the United States than it has in the last year. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're committed to doing that. There's dedicated, task forces to that in the government right now. There's a lot of coordination. I would say that the collaboration inside the interagency right now has never been stronger. I think it's a lot easier for companies like Jesse's to get in touch with the people they need and decision makers to get answers and get help. But when we look at industry, I think it's, big ideas, get more creative, bring those to us, bring solutions, not problems. These proposals that are coming in, I think it's, been about a year now. We're starting to see some really good ideas, some really well thought out proposals that can be actioned, and I think that you got.
But the speed and the ambition, you're not looking for small ball.
That's right. I mean, I think that, we've been admiring this challenge for 34 years and we're done admiring, right? I think that's pretty clear. We've invested billions of dollars in the last, the last calendar year. I mean, we're going to invest billions more this year. The capital, I don't think, is the constraint anymore. I think it's the creativity and the kind of I guess it's the, how ambitious do companies want to be, right? And I think that that's a shared kind of responsibility thing. I think that, they're getting used to the government again, and this government, this administration, and our appetite for these things and our willingness to do that we have the political will, we have the capital, and then it's coming down to good operators like Century. That's our biggest challenge as operators.
Joe, maybe if I could just jump in here. So our new Oklahoma smelter is going to double the size of the existing U.S. industry. And I just have to say, it's been a real breath of fresh air to deal with this administration, and to Josh's point, with this sort of big idea where we're going to take one site and double the size of what is already here. And when you go to this administration, you work with the different agencies, they come to it from a viewpoint of partnership. They know the types of issues that we're dealing with, and are working with us to knock those issues down where we can. And so this comes everywhere from permitting, as we talked about, but also having available sources of financing, or helping it work, and they have good relationships with these types of states and local governments that we're dealing with as well. So we're kind of getting one solution, and it makes it much easier to come and build these mega projects when we have a partner in government rather than someone that's sort of skeptical or working against us.
Well, talk about on the Oklahoma side. Here we are on the federal side. It's pretty obvious you get in the support. What's it like at the state level?
Yeah, Governor Stitt in Oklahoma has welcomed us with open arms. I think he understands the type of impacts, we haven't talked about this, Joe, but the types of impacts that these types of projects have on local communities. So if you take an aluminum smelter, our aluminum smelter in Tulsa, be 1,000 permanent jobs. These jobs pay an average wage and benefit package of $125,000 a year. So I always tell people, if you want to understand the aluminum industry, come look at one of my parking lots at one of my smelters. You see brand new F-150s. You see nuclear families. You go into the local town next door. I mean, these are in the middle of nowhere, but if you go in and you see the local town, and it's a working commercial center. These are healthy towns where people have long-term homes. We have generational workers in our smelters. And so when we went to Oklahoma and we went to Governor Stitt, he quickly understood that this is what we would be building in Enola, which is outside of Tulsa. And these types of jobs will enable us to create a new aluminum cluster right there in Oklahoma. So we'll be the first step in this, and we've already announced other downstream partners are going to build around us, which will be more jobs. So this will have billions and billions of dollars of economic impact to the Tulsa community.
Back to the scale, this one facility is going to double U.S. production. Talk about, I think the largest existing smelter now is 250,000 tons.
That's
right.
What
are you guys doing?
Yeah, that's right. So if you can just imagine, these are very capital-intensive projects. And so your fixed costs are a very big part of the aluminum business. And so any time we have the ability to spread those fixed costs over more units, we're able to be more competitive. So the exciting thing about this new project, so we've just covered it, lots of jobs, lots of investment. It's also going to be a first quartile asset. This will be one of the most efficient smelters in the world, and will really enable the next 50 years of aluminum production in this country. That's important for two reasons. One, if you looked at the technical team at Century today, we have a lot of Icelanders on our team. We have a lot of Brazilians on our team. And that's because the US industry, a lot of our people are gone or they've aged out. And so right now we're retraining that next generation of American technical capabilities, which will then enable the industry to continue on. So when we build the Oklahoma smelter, and that may just be the first phase of the next phase of the American industry.
Okay, moving forward.
Yeah.
So what can Commerce do? A lot of activity now. What do you guys have in the works to keep this type of growth going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that's like three parts, right? First is energy. Obviously, we've got to have the base load in order to power all these operations to make sure that they can run 24 hours a day in the case of aluminum, and that we're not putting strain on the grid, and we're not, taking away from other, verticals in the industry. The second one would be, the downstream demand. And demand is strong, right? I think that's a challenge that across the industries. But demand in aluminum it's there, right? So we know that, but addressable market and working with Century to identify that, and really working with all the big tech OEMs, auto OEMs, defense primes, and really understanding those requirements and where these materials are going to go. And then, I think the third one's speed. It's just speed. Like we've got to go. We're not even in the game, right? We're trying to get back into it. And what Jesse said about workforce development, I think is so key. And I think that people need to understand this. We are completely committed to developing the workforce of the future. If we're going to reindustrialize, we got to make sure we have that talent here at home. And these are American jobs for American citizens. These are good paying jobs. These are durable jobs. I mean, it wasn't long ago in America that you could work for a company like Century and retire from there and put kids through college, right? And we're bringing that back. I think that's the big goal here.
Got to ask about data centers. Jesse, your view, and then Josh, yours. Yes, they're competitors on the energy side, but I imagine that's an end customer too, because all that metal that's required. As we talk in energy circles, there's this unfortunate dichotomy. You got to do one or the other. There's not enough energy for both tech and manufacturing. I've got my view. What's your view?
Well, it's not actually true. So just to give you an example, so we have this site in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was in Oklahoma City last week with Governor Stitt, and the day before he had breakfast with me, he was out announcing a new meta data center also in Tulsa. So the energy is there. We have a lot of energy in this country. I think the administration is doing a lot to unlock more energy in this country, but the energy is there. We just need to make sure it goes to the right places, and we need to make sure that it continues to grow.
And from government side?
I think that, what Jesse's saying is true. I agree. I don't think that there's not enough energy. I think it's how are we getting the energy to these projects, right? And so I think that's the approach. We need to be very intentional about where this power is going, where it's coming from, and what sources are powering what. But it's not an either or. It's not a binary choice. I think both these things will exist beautifully together. I think that they will both grow exponentially over the next 3 years. And we'll do everything we can from the government side, to whether it's streamlining permitting, whether it's bringing more capacity online for power generation. You see, colleagues at the Department of Energy are absolutely doing everything they can about transmission, generation, because it's not enough to just generation. Transmission's a big, concern. Yes. So working on that. But I think that, again, it comes back to the partnership that Jesse talked about. We're partners now. It's no longer this either or there's not two sides of the table. We want to partner with industry to help industry grow, to bring this back.
And the truth is, Joe, we need both. I think you heard in the lead-in, President Trump has this great line. He says, if you don't have steel, you don't have aluminum, you don't have a country. Well, it's certainly true also that if you don't have data centers, you don't have a country. So we need all of these things to be here. And because of that, we will make it so. This is a great country. We're not going to be able to move forward without all of these things. We need the building blocks for our country, steel, aluminum, and we need the high end, we need the future. This AI data center build out is important too. So we can do all of it. We just need to make sure that they're all aligned, and there's ways to do that, and we're seeing that in Oklahoma right now.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just say that the base metal case is everything, right? I think that when we hear a lot of talk about minerals and which ones are more important than others, and how are we prioritizing these? And I would say that, without reindustrialization, true reindustrialization, without building the case for base metals, you don't get these byproduct credits, right? And so I think that operations like Century, Resolution's a great one. When you talk about copper, you think about some of these different things that are coming online, that's going to unlock a lot of the other key components and inputs that we need in the supply chain to do the data center build out, to do the rest of this transformation when we talk about reindustrialization.
A lot of momentum, a lot of optimism, but again, looking at a challenging environment. high energy, Chinese market manipulation. It's a very difficult sector. But you seem very optimistic. Why is that?
Yeah, I think we're more listen, I've been in the industry for a long time now. I've never been this optimistic. I think we never have seen as many demand cases as we're seeing right now. And we've never seen the recognition of how important, at least during my time period, I think back in the 50s they knew, we've never seen the recognition of how important these base metals are, especially from our government partners, to be honest. I guess we've always known, we've seen this, but we've never seen that recognition. And really, we haven't spoken about it, but when you see how fragile supply chains are today, so, for instance, 20% of US imports of aluminum come from the Middle East. Well, it's not coming in today. And so the truth is we need to be able to produce this at home. And if we can't, then we're in big trouble. So I think that's why I'm optimistic. I think the world is recognizing just how important it is to have these steady supply chains at home for these key raw materials that are necessary to meet both commercial and military demand.
I was going to say, same thing. Seems like base metals is having a moment.
Yeah, I think well-deserved, right? I think, again, we've been admiring the challenge for 34 years. We're done admiring. I think that, I'm optimistic because, I have the privilege of serving, for the Secretary of Commerce and also the President and seeing just the sheer will and determination that's inside the buildings and just across the interagency to get this done. Everybody's rowing in the same direction, I think, which is, I don't know if that's normal in DC, but it seems to be today. And I think that it's also the level of competence. You have really sophisticated folks now that from the political side that are ready to do these deals. I think deals are happening. I think Jesse can attest to that. I think it's one of those things that if there's something to be done, we're all ears. We want to hear about it. And I think that's where the optimism comes from.
Okay, last thing, if I may, we're over. A lot of manufacturers in the room. When they come to see you, what kind of things are you looking for? What do you want them telling you?
Yeah, solutions, not problems, and don't sugarcoat it. I think that, the biggest thing for us is not what works about projects, but what doesn't. We're not Wall Street. There's no penalty for telling us that. I think that, government support is something that can be different. It's not just financial support, right? It could be policy support. There's a lot of things we can do, a lot of tools that the government has. But if we don't understand what the challenges are ahead of us, we're visitors. The Secretary says this, right? We're just visitors in your world, in your business, right? You guys know your business better than we do. We're pretty smart. We can figure it out pretty quick. But we're going to rely on this partnership to understand what those challenges are. And if we're not being honest with each other up front, then it's going to be very hard as we get down the road. So that it affects the speed, slips timelines to the right. So we want to make good decisions. We want to get good operators, good partners, and we want to build these things and get them going.
Fantastic. Let's end on that note. That's very positive. Thank you both. Please join me in thanking our panelists.